One of the least talked about but most prevalent problems that happens in startups when they're scaling are communication problems, specifically communication problems between co-founders. In this video, I want to talk about how to navigate difficult communication problems with the leadership or co-founders within a startup. Hey everyone, I'm David Sherry. I'm a coach to founders and creators based in sunny Santa Monica. If you want videos about personal growth and team development, you can subscribe to this channel below. Almost every founder that I know has been through some type of difficult communication issue that's come up with a co-founder or a team member. These issues normally lead to messy situations, sometimes to the extreme with a co-founder breakup. There's always complex situations that happen in these startups, and while many people focus on the tactics and strategy of building a business, and they wish that that is the only thing they'd have to think about, the reality is people are a core part of business, and there are always going to be some struggles that emerge around communication. Now, I've made my fair share of mistakes here. I've had issues where bridges sort of got burnt through not handling things the proper way, and I'm consistently working with different companies who are navigating these types of difficult discussions between leadership on a frequent basis. I wanted to share how I'm helping companies navigate how to go through these tricky communication situations with ease. And I want to talk about what we can do when co-founders disagree. To start, let's talk about when these types of leadership communication issues start to arise. In reality, they can happen at any stage of the business, but they tend to happen in a few key moments. People problems and miscommunications, they can happen because of growth. When your company grows really quickly, suddenly roles need to rearrange, and the business is no longer the same business as when it just started out with the two of you in your garage typing away. Now you maybe have a team, you've got more customers, and the stakes are higher, and this can prompt some major communication problems. Communication problems can also happen when there's a lack of growth. When the business is going through tough times and you have to make tough decisions, it's also the case that that challenge is going to lead to a strain on your relationships. When problems in startups and communication start to arise, typically that's happening below the surface. So it's not the case that suddenly there's just this big communication issue. Typically they are brewing for a long time. And when they're brewing, they often will present some signs that you can learn to pay attention to. One example sign is that a member of leadership begins to check out. You can tell that while they were previously very involved in different areas of the business, now they're showing up less. Now they're appearing to give up more. Now they're working on projects with more of a sense of futility, and you can tell that they're starting to burn out. Another symptom is that a leadership member or a startup founder, they check back into the business. Well, they were sort of a little bit pulled back or removed. Suddenly they feel the need to get their hands dirty, to put their hands in every part of the business, and they're overcorrecting what they previously were doing by now getting involved in everything. Another symptom is when you're starting to jump on many different types of calls with different people on the team, and certain complaints start to come up in those calls, certain frustrations start to come up in those calls, but the person who those frustrations are geared towards isn't actually on the call. So there's a lot of conversation happening behind the scenes where the person who the conversation about is not involved in that discussion. And because of that siloed communication, what happens is these mistakes and these miscommunications, they start to compound. This lack of trust starts to erode, and the credibility and the decisions that happen around it, they start to get seen in a worse and worse light. And this is what you really don't want happening when you're trying to focus on the business and growing the business the way it needs to be. So what can be done about these challenges in communication and leadership? How do we get back to returning to some sense of alignment? Well, the first thing is to remember that this is about people first, responsibilities and roles second. While it is really tempting to just push through, focus on the business, focus on the strategy, we have to remember that we need to take a back step and go to the people level, the people layer of the business to resolve some of these issues that have been coming up. And that all starts by reopening channels for honest feedback. It is probably the case, if you're in this situation, that some difficult conversations need to be had, some misunderstandings have been stacking up and need to be addressed, and it just starts with booking a time for people to get together and have these discussions. You're doing a disservice to your own growth, to the other person's growth, when you avoid having conversations that might have some emotional charge or might have some negative feedback, and instead just keeping them siloed and keeping them quiet. If your team member, your co-founder, your leadership has a true intent to help the business succeed, while these conversations can become unpleasant, oftentimes they can leave with better alignment, and with some of that emotional difficulty just let up, and a lighter feeling can emerge within the team. I recommend you do this by hosting a meeting focused on clearing up any interpersonal conflict that's going on. You can have a meeting where the whole purpose is, hey, let's bring these things out into the light. Let's have this sort of neutral space where we can discuss the different misunderstandings that have been going on so that we can re-find some alignment together. In this meeting, a key thing to do is have people share a few specific moments where they were struggling or felt like something happened that put them off into the position that they're in today. You can say something like, when this happened, it made me feel this way. When that decision was made, I believe it led to X, Y, and Z. Have people be very specific about how they're feeling. Have people not point the finger at anyone else. This is purely a time to say, I'm not saying this is rational. I'm not saying that this is how you meant it. I'm just saying that this is how I felt in that moment. This is what I thought in that moment. This is how that made me feel and led me to do this. And if each person can share some of those moments, the other people within the group suddenly are able to become more aware of what might be going on for that other person. And I often see with different teams, sometimes I have founders say, wow, I had no idea they were feeling that way, or that really helped me understand where they were coming from. Now, I want to go into just a few other quick tips that might help with that difficult conversation, because you might be scared thinking, wow, this is a big conversation. How will I navigate this? The first is to start the meeting on a positive note. Ask a question to the group or the co-founder, what are you most excited about right now? What does have your energy? What did you originally connect with in this business that made you love the work that you were doing? Starting on a positive note is just a great way to get the conversation opened up in a more neutral to positive zone. The second thing you can do is to make sure you end the meeting on some type of mutual respect. You can even joke at the beginning of the meeting and say, hey, at the end of this meeting, we're going to virtually hug it out. We're going to fist bump just to let each other know, hey, whatever we shared, it's all good. We're still close. The third thing as a tip for this conversation is to let people have time and space to share, but also don't let them have too much time. Maybe you can say something like, hey, what if we each take 5 minutes just expressing a little bit of how we're feeling, no more than 5, and then we can talk about what that means for the business. See if you can time constrain it so people don't just drag on and on with emotional baggage. And the last tip for hosting this type of meeting is to leave the meeting with clear next steps. You might create some momentum in this meeting and you want to take advantage of that. Book another meeting out in the future, or just leave with some type of action item that everybody involved can participate in to keep the momentum going. As a quick tip, having a meeting after this more people-focused meeting that is based solely on a discussion about roles can be very helpful. Oftentimes, these type of meetings, they really are in some ways about the person, but also in some ways about the role that that person is in within the business. And so it's always a good time to check back in on what is the role that you're playing, what's the role that I'm playing, what are our responsibilities, what are we mutually agreeing to. Now, it might be the case that a neutral third party to bring into these conversations is going to be helpful in helping you resolve any type of co-founder miscommunications, any type of leadership struggle that's going on. A neutral third party could be a mentor, it could be someone on your board, it could be a coach or a therapist. Potentially, it could be someone on the team, although it's probably best to keep them out of these type of discussions where possible. You can use your own judgment for that. But having this neutral third party, they can act a little bit like a referee. They can act a little bit like somebody to guide the conversation into healthy directions that allow you to both express yourselves and what's going on, but also lead to some type of next step in alignment. Of course, you can always check out my information below. I coach frequently with different startup founders. Oftentimes there's co-founder miscommunications, and I'm happy to be a resource to you if this is something that you need. You can check out my website below if that is of interest. Now, to end, alignment conversations are difficult, but the reality is things can get better. I have seen companies really go through transformation where it seemed like the co-founders were at this impasse. There'd always be these issues. And over time, there actually was renewed alignment, renewed ability to create open communication. So keep your hopes high. It is possible. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. However, the other thing to remember is that this process takes time. It's not likely going to be the case that a single meeting is going to fix all of your co-founder issues, all of your communication issues, especially if this is something that's been building for a very long time. The longer these conversations go unhad, the longer it's going to take this process to resolve itself, to even out, to bring things back into alignment. So what conversations are you willing to have? Are you willing to have these hard conversations to stop the repetition of sideways energy happening below the surface in the company, and instead bringing people together to actually address the core issues? I hope that this was helpful in you thinking through the way that you can navigate communication issues at your startup, at your company, with your leadership team. If you have any questions, I would love to hear them below. And I hope you have an amazing week. I'll be back again with more videos like this, and we'll chat again soon. Later.